Welcome to the Malachi's Message Foundation and its Toxic Mold Sucks Stories, where we want people to know that toxic mold is a real danger and threat to not only your health, but your home, your finances, and your relationships. We want to raise awareness about toxic mold by showing you the real damage it does to the people, families, and children it affects, and the process they go through after being impacted by mold in order to regain their health, their home, and their lives back. Hi, my name is Elizabeth Kripe. I'm the executive director and co-founder of Malachi's Message. Today, Emily Rochelle is hosting. She is our board director and co-founder of Malachi's Message. You are watching Toxic Mold Sucks Stories. Today, we get the privilege of hearing from Ashley. She's just an amazing mom, which you're going to hear in a minute, literally the definition of super mom, and you will see why. She's also a Young Living representative. So if you need oils, you can see the lovely wall behind her. She will gladly talk to you about that. She's someone who's been very active in her church and community. And Ashley, we are so excited to hear your story today. Thank you for coming on with us.
Thank you for having me.
Ashley, before you get into your mold story, will you kind of tell people a little bit about your life before you all got exposed to mold?
Well, my kids were very active in sports. They did track and cross country and were always outside and playing with neighborhood friends and going from place to place, just full of energy, wrestling, jumping around on the trampoline, super active, very active boys.
Where in your process, I guess, how would you mind just telling us your story in regards to mold?
Okay. Let's see. So my kids were very sick. Their skin was just like falling off of them. Um, where they sat, there was dead skin, and in their bed, they had dead skin. They had to clean it up every day. They had to clean the floor every day because it would fall onto the floor. And we went to so many different doctors. We went to different pediatricians and dermatologists and allergists, and both adult and the for the pediatrician for kids. And we just nobody was able to find anything that was wrong. And years ago, they were put on steroids. They had topical steroids, they had oral steroids, trying to get control of their skin. But in March of last year, so March of 2020, things got um, just so much worse where they weren't able to walk. And so in the morning, they would call me, and which I mean, like they were crying and screaming all night because they were hurting so bad. Because the steroids, I didn't know at the time, it was thinning their skin. And so, they would just barely scratch. And so they would just bleed. They would be wrapped in wet wraps, wrapped. And my youngest liked being wrapped in like plastic wrap to kind of shield him from hurting his skin. And he felt like it kind of made his skin moist. So all night it was up and down with them. But in the morning, they'd let me know when they wanted me to come get them out of bed. And so they were just having trouble walking. So I would get them into a chair and wheel them into the bathroom and put them into another chair for them to brush their teeth and everything. And then wait for them to be done with that. And so they were like 13 and 10 at the time. And so then I would wheel them across the house to the kitchen to be able to sit and have breakfast. And we started homeschooling. We were in our third year. And I would carry them to the table to homeschool. And I didn't know how bad things were. And so I was still like, okay, let's get some reading done and let's do your math, until things got so bad that they couldn't even concentrate on getting schoolwork done. Their skin was just so bad and bothering them so bad that it was hard to concentrate. So I had a friend who kept telling me, you need to take them to the chiropractor. Like, let them help, let her help them. And I was like, what, like, what's the chiropractor going to do for their skin? Like, I'm not making the connection. But she said, just just take them to her and let them see. And it was a huge ordeal to get out of the house because they couldn't put clothes on. They stayed just in their underwear all the time because it hurt to have clothes on their skin. So I finally was like, okay, fine, I'll take them to the chiropractor. And I had been texting her, so she kind of knew what was going on. She just hadn't seen it for herself. And so I loaded them up in the car, had to help them get dressed, force them to get dressed, put clothes on, and they didn't have to wear shoes. Shoes just hurt their feet so bad, even like flip-flops, because they weren't going to be touching the ground anyway. They couldn't bear weight to be able to walk. So so I loaded them up on my back and took them in, and she was like, oh my gosh, this is bad. And I'm like, yeah, like, what do we do? Like, is there, like, I wasn't aware of like functional medicine doctors or any really type of alternative medicine at that time. I had been to one years ago, but I had never even heard of such a thing. And so she was like, let me talk to your doctor that you've been seeing for the last few months. Let me talk to him in Frisco, and then we'll see where to go from there. And so they talked, and she called me back after she had seen them and adjusted them and was super concerned. She talked to that doctor and called me and said, we think that something in your house is making them sick and you need to get out. And I'm like, oh, that's so funny. Like, whose house gets them sick? Okay. Literally, I did not know a whole lot. I have one friend who I kind of saw some of her post about her being sick with mold, but I didn't totally understand everything or make the connection. And so she was like, yeah, I'm not laughing. You need to get out. And I was just like, I don't know where we would go. Like, this is our house. So where do you go when you can't stay at your house? So, so I just started texting some friends and letting them know, like, our chiropractor needs us to leave. I don't know what to do. And so a friend who lives a couple blocks away, who my kids play with her kids, said, you can borrow our camper. Like, then at least like you can still come in the house and cook for them. So they were having like they've always had really bad food sensitivities. And they were to the point that all they could eat was turkey, chicken, and sweet potatoes. That was the only thing that they wouldn't just break out in hives. And so, so I was having to get real creative in like searching Pinterest, like, what can you do with chicken and turkey and sweet potatoes? And so I was having to cook for them a lot. So my friends knew that I needed to be close to the kitchen. Like, I couldn't just go get food for the kids. So she said, I'll bring my pop-up camper. I'll put it in your driveway and you can use it as long as you need to. And so I was like, okay, like, I guess that's what we'll do until we can figure this stuff out. And so another friend put me in contact with somebody that could come and do the air quality testing. So we went ahead and moved out mid-April. So it was about a month that they weren't able to walk. And so we moved out and we stayed out there. I'd come inside and cook. And then when they needed to brush their teeth or they needed to come, they needed to use the bathroom, I would carry them from the camper we had 3 bathrooms. So I'd carry them into the bathroom that was closest to the back door. And I would, just carry them in several times a day. And then at night to brush their teeth again and everything, not knowing what was in the walls. And so we had air quality testing done I guess that was like mid to late April. And the air quality was fine. So I went in and I was trying to find, how do you find mold if you don't see it? Because we couldn't see it anywhere, which I didn't really know what to look for. And so I just told my husband, okay, so if my boys are the ones that are so sick, they have a Jack and Jill bathroom, like the bathroom in between their bedrooms. There's plumbing there. Like, let's open up that wall and let's see what happens. And there are pictures of us opening up the wall. And I like immediately, my eyes start burning, they're watering, and I'm like having trouble breathing. And I didn't know what it was. So I didn't know to react that way, that it would even cause that. I just was not educated on this at all. And so he's showing me the mold on the back of the tile and everything as he's breaking it off. And I had to leave, and I came like out into the living room, and I still couldn't catch my breath and my eyes were burning and watering. So I went outside and I was like, okay, like kind of got myself together, and I go back in. I kind of had my mouth and face covered up, and I'm like this isn't good. I don't know what that is, and I didn't know the difference between like mildew and mold. And I have since been taught that's like the same thing. Like the kids doctor that they see now has said, like, if you see like black around your shower, like it's too late, that needs to come out. And I just didn't know, I didn't know that stuff. I just saw this black on the back of the tile and I knew how I would reacted. And so I said, I just like, you need to stop. I told my husband, stop and put something over that, put some plastic or something over that. We've got to leave this. And so again, I didn't know what to do. The air quality was normal. So I called the insurance and told them what was going on. And they said, okay, well, we'll send out a like water remediation or whatever it was. And I didn't know. And so they come out and with doors open and no plastic or anything up, they start cutting out the wall. And they didn't cut out the tile. They left the tile. They started like in another area where they cut out sheetrock, and they cut out around the back of the toilet and around on the other side of the tile where there was a wall, they cut out that sheetrock, and they took out insulation and stuff from underneath the tub. And so, and then they closed the doors and put the dehumidifiers and stuff in that little bathroom. And things were still just not sitting right. And I got in there and I'm still seeing black, like all over the back of the tile and everything. And so I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't know the steps I'm supposed to take. And I was kind of like sleep deprived and, trying to take care of the boys that normally I'm a really good researcher, and I was not able to find what I needed to find, but I know that I wasn't in my right mind. I was not sleeping at night and worried about them and everything else. And so I was just like, okay, like, I don't know what to do here. Like I'll call mold remediation companies. And so my chiropractor had referred us to a functional medicine doctor. I think he like specialized in neurology or something in Dallas. And so it was COVID. And so everybody was at home, so I couldn't see him or he couldn't see my boys. So we had to do it by Zoom. And he, told me about like a mold armor kit to go get from Home Depot. We did that. And at the end of it, it showed, yeah, there was mold, but we didn't know the types or anything else. So that was kind of silly. And he said he was trying to take care of us and trying to we had spent so many thousands of dollars at all these different doctors that, you know, if my insurance covered him or not, I was going to him. And he felt bad having to send us to a doctor that was going to cost twice as much as he did. And so he was trying to help us, and he was talking to that doctor and trying to kind of get us started on some stuff. And he finally said, I hate to have to do this to you, but we have a like mold, like she's nationally known for mold, and she's like literally in our backyard. That's the one I've been talking to. I really think you need to go see her. And I'm going to talk to her about seeing the boys as one person, because they had never seen this, where both the kids are reacting the exact same way. Like everything was the same. Their blood work. He finally ran some blood work in April of last year. And he was shocked that their blood work was like the same, like everything, like their livers were failing and everything was the same. And I can't even remember all the white blood cells, red blood cells, everything was just like, so many things were off. And so he said, you're going to need to go to see this doctor. So we finally, after 3 weeks of being in the camper, my kids couldn't do it anymore. My youngest was feeling claustrophobic and like he couldn't breathe. He was having some anxiety. And so I had a friend that was saying, the same friend who was telling me to go to the chiropractor, she kept saying, like, just come stay with me. Like, we have the whole upstairs that you can have. It was like three bedrooms, 1 bathroom. And I was like, I don't want to impose, whatever. So after 3 weeks and staying in the camper, we went to her house and my kids kind of started getting better. And I'm like, So I had 4 different mold remediation companies come over, and all 4 of them found mold in different places. The bathroom that I was sending them to, it was all in that bathroom. 3 of the 4 walls had mold. It was in this room. This room goes into the bathroom, and so there was all this. They had to cut out this whole wall and part of the other wall. In the closet that's on this side, there was mold all in it. They had to take out the carpet in all 4 bedrooms. We eventually had to hire one of them, and so we lost all 3 bathrooms. It was in all 3 bathrooms, all the showers. It was in our kitchen. It was in the cabinets underneath the kitchen sink. It was in, I think, 9 rooms of the house. It was even going out to the garage. It was in all of the bedrooms. And so they ended up having to tear out everything in the kitchen and everything in the 3 bathrooms, and then all the carpet. And then in that process, we found out we had foundation problems and plumbing problems. That was like a result of what was the plumbing problems that were happening above the slab. And so I finally hired the mold remediation company, and I had to have the guy come out that did the air quality reports, the testing. And I asked him, like, look at this. Why was the air testing normal? And he didn't know, but he was a mold assessment consultant, MAC, I think that's the term. And so he had to do the report for the mold remediation company. And then he had to update it because they kept finding more. And so we stayed out of the house with everything that had to be done. In 9 months, we moved 13 times because we kept having to go different places and stay with different people and try to not overstay our welcome, although we may have a couple times. And so the boys, we started seeing their doctor, Carpathia, in June, and just getting out of the house, they got so much better. But then she was like, they have to walk, like they have to get exercise. And they're like, how do we do that? And she's like wanting them to walk up and down the stairs to just start sweating a little bit. And they were like, we can't walk stairs. Like, is she crazy? We can't do that. And then they had to go outside for 10 minutes a day. And just the wind hitting their skin would hurt so bad. But it was doctor's orders, so we had to do it. And so, so that was just like the road to them just getting even better. It kind of started in May and June. And then by September, they were running for the first time. They went and were playing soccer with friends at a birthday party. And they weren't wanting, it was really unusual in March when they were like, not, I'm gonna cry, not wanting to see friends because they love their friends. And so they didn't want to see anybody. They didn't want to go to anybody's birthday parties. And finally, it was the first week of September of last year, so almost a year, that they got invited to a birthday party they wanted to go to. And then like, they were like, we're just going to sit at the table while they play. And I'm like, okay, let's bring some stuff that you can do. And then I turn around and they're out there running and playing soccer with friends. So it's been almost a year, and now they're still on medicine and supplements from the doctor, but they are my youngest has his soccer tryouts tomorrow. This year my oldest did track, and he's doing cross country, and they're doing so much better. So that is kind of our story in a nutshell.
So a few things that we want to make sure people hear, and Emily, you can comment on this. I feel like we should first be throwing a party that they're doing all of that. Like, my goodness, that's amazing, man. And were you affected, before I ask that question, the next question, Emily, Ashley, were you affected? You weren't as affected as much as your boys. Were you or your husband affected as much?
My husband was like, I don't know what's wrong with me. It's like I have this brain fog. Like, I can't, get out of this. Like, I can't think straight and stuff. But then he would go to work and, was totally functioning just fine. And I know the doctors have wanted to do some testing on us to see, because obviously we could have some things that we're not even aware of. But we didn't have any skin issues or anything that we know of. But my husband, it was like a real short-lived thing with the way he was feeling. But we didn't have any kind of, allergy symptoms or anything that we know.
This is a really good example for people to hear and see that mold affects everybody differently. And one person just may be suffering in the house and everybody else fine. And, you always need to think mold for anybody who's not getting better, because just like in your case, it's your two boys and you and your husband weren't really affected, but they got to a point where they couldn't walk.
Yeah.
And their skin's coming off and bleeding. And I do have a question for you, Ashley. You bought this home as a resale, correct?
Yes.
And how long after when you moved in did your boys start having symptoms?
Well, it's so hard. I wish I had been paying more attention. Because I think we lived in this house. Okay, it was about 3 years. It was about 3 years later that things went really bad. And so it was great talking to Dr. Christensen, because she was helping me realize some things. because she was like, yeah. And so when did you start homeschooling? And I was like, oh my gosh. Like once we started homeschooling, things got worse because we're in the house all the time. And so, yeah, it had been about 3 years when things started getting bad and their histamine reaction to everything was skyrocketing. Like they haven't been able to have sugar in nearly 2 years because their body just treats it like it's allergic to it, and they break out in hives.
Emily, I know we were all talking about this before we got on the recorded call, but on that note, because so many people that we both talked to individually and together have purchased resale homes, what are some tools that they can use to find out a little bit about their home before they move into it?
Oh, that's a great question. Because unfortunately, a lot of people like Ashley, they move into a home, and even if they had a mold assessment done, because I'm going to hit on that too with you, Ashley, real quick. But one thing that you can do, and even Ken Paxton, the Attorney State General, talks about it on his website, is there's something called a CLUE report. It stands for Comprehensive Loss Underwriting Exchange Report. It's kind of like a credit report for a home. Like we have credit reports, as people to let the banks know if we're going to be responsible enough to repay a loan and so forth. Well, every home has what's called the CLUE report. That's short for the long version. And it keeps record of any and all claims, whether they were covered or denied by an insurance company, whenever a homeowner calls to make a claim on their house for like a pipe break or HVAC system or water heater. And it stays in this database for up to 7 years. And I don't know why this isn't made mandatory to be attached to every listing of a house, because it could prevent so many people from buying a problematic home that may be full of mold growth. Because unfortunately, some sellers aren't completely upfront and honest in their disclosures, and they just hope that you don't figure it out or your inspector doesn't find it. And so that report, the CLUE report, it's a free report. You get it from your insurance company. They can email it to you very quickly. It is your right to have it. And I would highly encourage everybody to get that report before they ever buy any resale home, so that way they can see if something is potentially being left off of the seller's disclosure that's on the CLUE report. It's a great report to have. That's the first report any attorney is going to pull if a client moves into a house and discovers that potentially there are things not disclosed that obviously they're now financially responsible for. So get the CLUE report. And then 2, unfortunately, not all mold consultants do their job right. And in this case with Ashley, this mold consultant is they didn't do their job, which is to actually go in and do the assessment. Testing is secondary to the assessment. The assessment is the most important part in the entire process. That's where the consultant goes in and uses his tools to identify where you have mold growth, how big the problem is, and then of course what caused it. What's that water source? Because mold's not going to grow unless there's a source of water. This inspector, it sounds like that you hired, Ashley, just came in and basically looked around, did some air samples, and that was it. Is that kind of what happened?
Yeah, I think he also said that he did some, I forget what it's called, some samples like on the windowsill and stuff, like
Tape lip. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He also did that, he said.
Okay. So the air samples, just so everybody knows, everybody likes to get air samples, but those are the worst samples you can do in the industry, because mold spores don't stay airborne forever. They have to settle. And some molds are slime molds, and they're denser and they're not as airborne easily as humidity-driven molds, and they rarely ever show up in air samples. The reason why I say air samples are bad is because a lot of times they come back showing everything is fine, when just like in your case, it wasn't fine. And so a lot of people are under this false sense of security that because the air sample result came back showing nothing was there or there was no elevation, that their indoor air quality is okay. And that's not the case. Like in your case and a lot of other people's cases, their air quality is really bad. It's just, unfortunately, during the 2 to 5 minutes that inspector was taking his air sample, the mold spores from those colonies weren't airborne and around him to be captured. Does that make sense?
That's to me, yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't mention that we did have an ERMI test done. The
That's
doctor,
a good test.
the functional medicine doctor that we had first seen, Carpathia, I guess, had suggested to them to get an ERMI. And so we got the ERMI, and I think there were 7 different types of toxic black molds that were picked up on that cloth. And so that's when I was like, oh, like we might really have something here.
The ERMI is a great test to do. They can also come back negative if you don't have enough dust to collect. We've had a client before who cleaned her entire house and then did her ERMI. And it came back showing everything was fine, and it wasn't. And it's just because she didn't have enough dust because she had just cleaned everything. So, but the ERMI is an excellent test to do. It's not going to show you where the mold growth is, but it will give you a good idea of what you and your family are breathing in.
Yeah.
So kudos to your doctor for recommending that.
Yeah, that was good.
So, yeah. Okay.
So where are you guys at now? How are your kids doing? How's their skin doing? Outside of running around a lot, it sounds like it's keeping you very active and busy.
Yes. Now they're like into mountain biking and all this fun stuff. They're doing pretty good. My youngest, he's still pretty itchy, and so he'll get like just a little extra medicine sometimes, and there's stuff that he has to put on topically, and we try to give him stuff that's liquid so that his liver doesn't have to process it. Like the doctor has said, even in like the capsules, like if you put something in a capsule, like you have to process that capsule. And so it's best for him just to have liquids like put straight into his mouth and on topically on his liver. And so his liver tests are still pretty high. But she said that we don't have to go back until October to have we were having it like every 3 months, but she said we can try to make it 4 months. And so we'll go back in October and have everything rechecked, but he's still pretty itchy. His skin, especially like at his ankles, he's pretty itchy. He just like wears pants and socks, and like, even though it's 100 degrees outside, he'll have on a light jacket, just so that he doesn't claw at his skin. So he's sometimes pretty miserable, and she said I'm now seeing like more of the nurse practitioner I saw Dr. Christensen at first, but now I'm seeing her nurse practitioner that's incredible and so knowledgeable. And she tells me like they need to get at least 10 hours of sleep every night. Their bodies have to be able to recover from this. And so with homeschool, we get to do that. We get to sleep as long as they need to.
When you found out that it was mold, Ashley, how did you feel?
I was just kind of numb. I mean, again, I wasn't sleeping too much. There's still stuff I don't understand. I didn't understand it all. And I was very confused, and so much of it. So we had a couple of spots where there was like a slow leak, like, I think it was like an air conditioner line or something that was leaking. And then there had been a leak in the kitchen. So like we had to take out like a lot of the roof. Even there was stuff in the roof, but there was no outside damage on the roof. And so I don't know if the roof was replaced. And so it got in the attic. And everywhere else, I don't know, in like 6 different rooms, it was previous water damage, and they fixed the plumbing and then just put the drywall back up, and whatever.
And that was the previous owners that did that,
as far as we know.
Okay, so there's
been so many people that have lived in the house, but our neighbors have told us that the house did have the previous owners did have some plumbing issues. And when I talked to the plumbers, like, why would I got to know my plumbers really well. They're like the main contractor I would ever recommend. They went above and beyond and fought for me and were so amazing. I was telling them, like, why would the plumbers not, fix the mold around it, all the water damage. And hi, we're still recording.
Aw.
And so he
Is that your oldest or youngest?
the youngest, he'll be 12 on Saturday. I asked the plumbers, like, why would that happen? And he was like, honestly, like, we do the plumbing. If there's water around it, like plumbers, like, they'll dry up the water, but most plumbing companies don't know that the water turns to mold and everything else. And so when they, took out like all the tubs, we lost all the tubs. And it was so many different things. And I told the insurance company, like, there were so many different problems that just were from previous owners, like the bathtub not having the jets connected to plumbing, that was in the master bathroom, and they tiled on the tile of the shower floor. Maybe thought it was mildew and just all over it. And I did read that, like, bleach does not kill mold. Like, you have to cut it out. And so that's why I had been told a lot, oh, just bleach it. I mean, if I had a penny for every time someone told me to just bleach it.
So a lot of people do think that bleach is the solution, and it's not. It will kill surface mold on like hard, non-porous surfaces, but it's not going to. Mold remediation is the removal of mold, okay? Not killing it with bleach. You have to remove it. You have to get it like a weed. You have to like get the roots out. Otherwise, it's just going to keep coming back. And you obviously have to correct the water source too. Otherwise, it'll keep coming back. Yeah. So you're right.
What is the one thing, looking back now, what is the one thing you wish people knew about mold?
There's so much. I mean, so many things of what I hear are people not taking it seriously, or, it's destroyed families. Like my husband said, it was kind of a blessing that it was the kids, like, even though that sounds awful, but with it being them and you could physically see it, so many people, as y'all know, preaching to the choir, have symptoms that you don't see. Maybe their stomach is real bloated, or maybe they're having headaches, and I have heard so often, and y'all know better than I do, but that so often it's the wife that is sick, because typically she's home taking care of the kids, or she works out of the house or whatever, that it's a lot of times the moms, the wives that are getting sick. And sadly, sometimes the spouses don't believe them that they're having these problems. And so I wish that people knew how real it was, and that it does, just like we've already talked about, that it does cause such a multitude of symptoms that need to be taken seriously. And to get the right somebody out to actually help you find the mold, don't find it yourself. Don't do that. If you think there's mold, get a consultant out to find it. That was a big mistake, us trying to find it ourselves. And I mean, it was in 9 rooms of the house, so we wouldn't have found it all. But it would have been great to have an assessment consultant to know what they were doing and come in and find it before we just started tearing out carpet and walls and everything. There's a lot to it.
Yeah.
Emily, do you have anything else you'd like to ask her?
Well, I was just going to mention, because unfortunately, a lot of consultants in the industry do exactly what her consultant did, which is just run in and do air samples, and so if you're ever in question, get an ERMI and do what Ashley did, that her doctor suggested, because that is a very good sample to do. Just make sure you get enough dust, and that'll tell you what you're kind of breathing in, and let you know before even you have a consultant out, unless you can find a good consultant, one that maybe is highly reputable or one that attorneys use. Like, search for the consultant that is going to come in and actually do the assessment and not just walk in and do testing, because that's not their job. Their job is to do an assessment, not just testing. That just makes them a tester, not an actual assessor.
And I think in a later video too, we're going to go into that in more detail, right? We're going to be interviewing an actual consultant and going into more detail with that. So be on the lookout for that video too.
It'd be great for people to know, how do you find a mold assessment consultant? Like, I didn't even know that was a word a year ago, and so, I love all that y'all are doing and how much you're helping people. And, I've seen a lot of the stories with y'all helping, restore, kids' toys, because we have to throw out everything, we have to throw out stuffed animals and board games and everything. And so, what y'all are doing is amazing and educating people. And I continue to learn so much every time y'all do a post or a video. So I love that y'all do this and are educating people. It's amazing. I appreciate y'all very much.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. This was amazing. So many people are going to receive just amazing information from this.
Thank you, Ashley.
Yeah.
You're welcome.